One day, I was in psychology class and we were doing get to know you exercises. The question was, what's your heritage? So I respond with, oh, I'm Hungarian! I'm met with blank faces. So I'm like, you know the country? And this guy starts getting this grin on his face. Well, this can't be good. He said, so, if you're Hungarian, does that mean you're always hungry? Ahaha, ahaha, ahaha. You know that emoji where they put their hand on their face like this? Yeah, that was me. You see, I am Hungarian, distant, yes. However, my dad tries to go there whenever he can. In 2018, I went there and I learned a few things. We must remember these things in order to grow as a society, and these things might just teach us what it means to be human. By now, you're all probably wondering, what are these things you speak of? Well, it is the history of this country, our history of oppression, how they broke free and grew from this, and how we must always remember that oppression because a new form of it can take its place. That's exactly what's happening right now in Hungary. A new form of oppression is showing its true colors. So, let's dive into this delicious dish to explain the history of oppression in Hungary, how they grew from this, and the oppression that is starting to go back into this country. Hungary first came to be after Austria-Hungary lost World War I and was stripped into a small amount of land. As you can see, Hungary is but a fraction of the great empire it used to be, yet it still grew and flourished. However, oppression came to the land during the Cold War. The Soviets. Because Hungary sided with Germany during World War II, the Soviets occupied Hungary as well as many other Eastern European countries behind the Iron Curtain after the defeat of the Axis powers. According to the U.S. Department of State, in October 1956, the Soviet Union ordered its troops to crush a nascent rebellion in Budapest, the capital of the Soviet satellite state of Hungary. The death of Stalin inspired hope in the Hungarians, causing a revolution of form. I can't believe I'm saying this, but Stalin might be right. The Hungarian people thought that America would help and come. Oh, how wrong they were. The American reception and settlement of Hungarian refugees in 1956 through 1957 by Peter Pastor states, the human cost of the revolution in Budapest was close to 20,000 wounded, about 2,500 dead, 50% of them under 30. Women, children, dead in the streets crushed by armed tanks under the false hope that help would come. The New York Times states that commentators encouraged the Hungarians to battle on in the false understanding that they received reinforcements from the West. We must learn from our country's inaction that resulted in Hungarian tragedy so that does not happen again. I can tell you that this is not a thing of the past. Promised revolutions violently crushed happen all around the world today. And this is not the only oppressions Hungarians had to face during that time. I remember my dad telling me a story of how our relative refused to give up his property to Soviet soldiers and was shot to death. This leads me on to my next point. Hungary is starting to see oppression resurface in the government, specifically Prime Minister Viktor Orban. According to The Atlantic, since resuming the premiership a decade ago, Orban has overseen the steady dismantling of the country's democratic institutions, eroding its freedom of press, undermining its education system, and limiting the power of the judiciary. Orban is changing Hungary from a democratic country into a country under dictatorship. Business Insider says, to combat the coronavirus, giving him the right to rule by decree indefinitely, the power to bypass the National Assembly, and suspend existing laws. The European Union member has also suspended further elections, efficiently eradicating democracy in the country and making Orban the world's newest dictator. Orban is taking advantage of the victims of the coronavirus pandemic in order to retain even more power. And this is not the only problem with his government. Human Rights Watch states, the government officials continue to engage in anti-migrant and xenophobic rhetoric. Asylum seekers are detained and denied food in border camps, despite several European court rulings ordering Hungarian authorities to resume food distribution. Orban's government is hurting the people that it's supposed to help and protect. Despite past and present oppression, Hungary has flourished. In the economic sense, which is shown through Statistica, 2019, Hungary's real gross domestic product grew by around 4.93% compared to the previous year, as well as the 2020 Index of Economic Freedom State. GDP growth has been respectable over the past 5 years and increased in 2018, stimulated by strong consumer demand, industrial activity, and construction. Yet, Hungary has also maintained its cultural roots as well. From handmade wine like my family's, to Hungarian crystal making. And don't let me get started on the food. It can brighten anybody's day up. This is Christe paprikas, an amazing chicken broth, and this is maki leaves. According to Taste Atlas, this sweet chilled soup made with sour cherries and sour cream is a traditional Hungarian summertime dish, also known as hij magilis, magilikos, or Christe magilis. It is prepared throughout the country as soon as cherries come into season. And let's not forget Hungarian porcelain. Ordona states the Hungarian porcelain and china manufacturer Herend, locally known as Herendi Factoria, is one of Europe's most respected manufacturers of white gold. The porcelain collection includes, for example, the Gardalolo dinner service, a design which Franz Joseph I of Austria once presented to his wife Sisi. Prominent customers of the manufactory based near Lake Balaton range from personalities such as Arnold Schwarzenegger to the Japanese Emperor Akihito. In 1851, Queen Victoria was attracted to this Chinese-styled dinner service that Herend had on show at the World Exhibition in London. The British Queen bought not an insignificant number of pieces. The porcelain was called Victoria in her honor. Later, Princess Diana became a Herend fan and became an enthusiastic collector of porcelain featured from the Hungarian manufacturer. To mark the wedding of Prince William to Kate Middleton, Herend created a new version of the classic Victoria design in 2011. When my dad first went to Hungary, it was during the Cold War in 1982. He was working in a factory in Sweden and found a distant relative who gave him the address to our distant family's house and sent him off. The only problem was he arrived in the middle of the night and to a secluded village as an American in a Soviet-occupied area. A Soviet soldier saw him and realized that he was American. What he did next surprised my dad. He helped him find the address and sent him safely to the house. Simple acts of kindness from people who you are supposed to be against remind one to always look in the good in people, for what their government has done does not define them. I once asked my distant cousin if he forgave the Russians for what they did, and he nodded, saying, "I love Russians." Hungarians' ability to forgive is remarkable and grow through adversity. Now, if you were to first ask when my dad first went there in 1982, the answer might have been different, and his distant cousin pointing and repeating the words, "Ruskis." However, the Hungarians ultimately forgave the Russians. So, maybe we can learn a thing or two from Hungarians and forgive, but never forget the oppressions we face.